Back when I was in middle school, I had very limited access to the internet and had zero interactions with the gaming community. I had no idea what were the biggest releases at the time, nor what anyone was playing. So in order to buy a game, I would go to a store and I would judge a game completely by looking at its cover. Most of the time I'd get catfished, but sometimes I'd find a really good game. So this is how I got introduced to the Tomb Raider franchise. It all started with Tekken 5, believe it or not.
The King of Iron Fist Tournament 5.
I know the games are completely unrelated, but hear me out. So, I used to play a lot of Tekken 5 when I was in middle school. Even when I was in primary school, actually, it goes way back. So Tekken was my first ever fighting game, and whenever I had the chance to use the internet, I would go on YouTube and watch those old fan-made music videos. They used to be a thing before shorts and edits. Now, how is this related to Tomb Raider? Well, in those AMVs, I found some footage when I asked from which Tekken game this was. Someone replied that it's a spin-off called Death by Degrees, starring Nina Williams. I looked up this game and I saw some footage and I was very intrigued. I looked for this game everywhere, but sadly I couldn't find it since it wasn't really popular, but every time I'd go to the store, I'd scan the shelves looking for Death by Degrees, but instead I found something else. I found a game with a brunette that has braids, holding two pistols.
Sometimes, to understand your present, you have to go back to your past.
I didn't buy it the first time, but I thought that was just another Tekken spin-off. I assumed the character on the cover was actually Julia from Tekken. She just looked very much like her. I told a friend of mine about it. I described what I saw on the cover, as I couldn't remember the name of the game, but he immediately understood what I was describing and he told me that it has nothing to do with Tekken. This is another game called Tomb Raider. You'd think after my interaction with my friends that I'd buy the game immediately, but no, I actually waited another year until on a random day I saw it again on the shelves and it was Tomb Raider anniversary for the PlayStation 2. I grabbed it, went home, and coincidentally that same day they aired the movie with Angelina Jolie on TV, which honestly I didn't like much, but it was very cool to see, the character in real life. Now, this game was nothing like I have ever experienced before. Lara Croft was completely isolated. Her only companion is gone and she goes on a journey alone.
Vast mountain ranges, sheer walls of ice, rocky crags, and savage winds. Much more like it.
What captured my attention was the lack of enemies and the complete absence of human enemies. It was clear that combat wasn't actually the primary focus. This interesting take on a game created quite a beautiful atmosphere, and the music only amplified it even further. Walking around in the cold caves or jumping across platforms in Greece made me feel a sense of discovery, like Lara really is the first human to step foot in these places after a very long time. Away from civilization and noise, the environment was silent. You'd rarely come across one or two enemies, usually bats or mice, rarely big ones. And since combat wasn't the main focus of this game, the developers turned their attention into exploration, navigating your environment, platforming, and of course puzzle solving. And it wasn't an easy game. Games back then were brutal. They had minimal instructions, no hand-holding, no arrows, and most importantly, no yellow paint that shows you where to go. All you had was Lara's journal, and you may or may not get a useful hint. Or maybe Lara will just tell you no. Now, at the time I got the game, my only way to access the internet was my laptop. Unfortunately, it died, leaving me with no guides, just me and this game with lots of trial and error. And like I said, it was hard. The puzzles were not beginner friendly at all. You really had to use your brain with this one, And like I said, being stuck with no guides, it wasn't easy. I spent the whole summer trying to finish the game. Now, when it comes to the characters of this game, Lara's character wasn't a traditional one. I understand now that the original Lara was more sassy and had a lot of one-liners, but the one from Anniversary came across as cold and goal-oriented. At the time, I was so used to the typical heroes, but Lara made me question her, because at one point Larson had the opportunity to shoot her but decided not to, showing that their dynamic wasn't purely that of an enemy. But once the roles got reversed, he showed faith in her, faith that she wouldn't actually shoot him, for a fuse nonetheless. But the moment made me question Lara. It was clear that Lara wasn't a typical hero. She wasn't a hero at all. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking, since she clearly stated,
I'm afraid you've been misled. I only play for sport.
she never once said she's on a journey to save the world. She just wanted that shiny artifact her father was after. The villain just happened to be on her way. So, I don't know, my brain was just programmed to think of every main character as a hero until Lara showed up. Now, she's not a bad guy either, so this is why I think she's very interesting. Now, speaking of the villain, Natla herself at first didn't start off as a pure mustache twirling villain. She actually asked Lara for a partnership. She just refused. That's all there was to it. And when you go on your journey to discover, that's when you find out that Natla is not just some, businesswoman. She's actually a goddess. Anyways, at the end, Lara ends up defeating Natla and by doing so, saving the world in a way. And that was it. That was the game. It was a game that I enjoyed very much. Now, I didn't become a huge Tomb Raider fan at that point. I liked it. It was among my favorites, but I still liked Resident Evil better. It was when they announced the reboot that I actually really became a Tomb Raider fan. And I know this will sound weird because a lot of the Tomb Raider community is very split, but to me, I actually loved both of them. I don't know, partially because I was isolated from the internet. I feel like the internet, in a way, influences our opinions a lot. Because ever since I got connected to the gaming community, I noticed that they always, in a way, whether consciously or unconsciously, influence my opinion. But since, like I said, when I first found out about the Tomb Raider reboot, I was still very isolated from the internet. I liked what I saw. I was impressed. I was shocked because that was not the typical Lara. But to me, I did not hate it at all. I actually liked it because they said this is an origin story. So to me, in my mind, in my head, it was a prequel. I did not think of it as a reboot. To me, that was the same Lara. It's just her first journey. She was still young, fresh out of college, going on her first job, being part of a TV crew, and she came across this cursed island that she was stuck in. And I love that they are remaking Tomb Raider Anniversary or Classic or whatever. They are remaking it, and it's titled Tomb Raider Legacy of Atlantis. Because now they are basically confirming my theory. It was a prequel. That's how I've always seen it. Now, I do have some criticism for the reboot. I do not like Rise, and I do not like Shadow. But I definitely loved the 2013 reboot. It's one of my favorite games of all time.